286 of the Minding Your Business podcast. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. Let's rock with the intro a little bit. All right.
That beat goes tough, y'all.
Yeah, that's my guy. Shout out to my guy Eli for hitting with the beat. That's a beat that he produced. He's a producer actually in the Nashville area, so shout out to him. He's got plenty of beats on YouTube. Great young brother who's doing great positive things through music, and we got the honor of him putting together our intro for the Minding Your Business podcast. That definitely goes hard, and he actually renamed it to Minding Your Business.
That's what's up. As a
result of that, so it's super dope. So shout out to Eli. Listen, thank y'all so much for joining me again here on episode number 286 of the Minding Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Champ Ron Brooks, here in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm excited to have you. Make sure you check the show notes, not only to tap in with our guest today, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, but also tap in with me. Champ 10K is where you can do so as well. And you can also check out all episodes of the Minding Your Business podcast, wherever you get your pods, and at champ10k.com. Hope you're coming off a great weekend. We're recording this on Monday, March the 14th. A lot going on. Hope that if you were here in Memphis, we had the snow stuff going on. I know y'all are still upset about gas prices. Just drive slow. That's what I'm going to tell you. I mean, what the hell, what you going to do? I mean, you're not, your alternative, you're not walking. None of y'all, I ain't going to see none of y'all on horseback no time soon. So y'all go ahead and govern yourselves accordingly. It's $5 a gallon. Do what you got to do, and definitely level up. So when gas goes up a little bit, your income got to go up too. So focus on the things that are important. Definitely for sure. So listen, I want to introduce my guy here. He's joining us down in South Florida. He don't have them snow problems where he's at. See up here, even in Tennessee, we get some of those problems, but he doesn't have those problems down there. But Mr. Michael Hall, who is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Digital Grassroots Innovation and Technology, D.G.I.T, down there. They, and we're kind of kindred spirits in this, and we're going to talk about this in today's conversation, because you all know with River City Capital here in Memphis, how we provide low-cost funding to Black, Indigenous, and women business owners here in this Memphis area. And Michael and his team do a tremendous job. As I had a chance to look over these last few days and really see what they do, see what, the impact that they're making. And that's the big thing, is that organizations now are making a concerted effort to, obviously have an impact on what they're doing. So it's not just about providing funds or these platforms, but how does it continue to impact, and how are we helping businesses ran by people of color? How are we helping them to be sustainable and to grow? And that's part of our mission. That's something we continue to work on, and that's something that Michael and his team do, man. So, Michael, man, I appreciate you joining me, man, from down in South Florida. I'm jealous of your weather down there, but I appreciate you jumping in with us.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was actually so cold. I had to put on some sweat shorts today. So
sweat shorts. Listen to it. Hey, man. Hey, listen, let's jump right in, brother. Tell us, for those that aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about, kind of how you got your start and how you got to launch such an important, and that's the word I'm going to use, a very important platform in your company, and what it does for your target audience, man. How did all this come about?
I guess if you look at the origination of a lot of it, most of my origination would come from the structure of my parents. My father did a lot for diversity and inclusion with engineers for the Department of Defense.
Gotcha.
And with everything he did with the Department of Defense, it put me in the position of really just being around Black successful people. And by being around them, it showed me what networking really looked like, when you take somebody and you put them into an environment you can't be in yourself, or an environment you fought to get into. And I think that part remains important because a lot of people don't always focus on just that element. It wasn't just that I got on and I figured it out. The core of it comes from my father, and the other core of it comes from my mentor, Columbus Smith Jr., that did a lot for Black men to get on into their environment and to become engineers at the Navy base in Panama City, Florida. So that was the start of it. Then as I continued to develop, we had a marketing company that I've been running for 16 years.
Yeah.
And in that marketing company, I saw continuous things in different sectors, from National Black McDonald's Owners Association, National Bar Association. There is diversity and inclusion in every sector of the world. We just happened to focus in on technology because it was the biggest thing at that time.
Yeah.
And so that's where we landed at. And we started doing work. I was introduced to the Knight Foundation by Felicia Hatcher and Derek Pearson, who is over Black Tech Week, now known as Center for Black Innovation. Absolutely. And once they gave me that opportunity, we had already been doing work with the CRAs, community redevelopment agencies, with our marketing agency, Digital Medium 4. But we just transitioned more into a tech and innovation role to help founders and entrepreneurs.
Man, I love that. I love that. You mentioned CRA and the importance of that, and we work a lot with CRA. It's some of my background in banking, quite frankly, Michael. But kind of talk about how you're partnering with with banks, right? And kind of the need for and the desire, quite frankly, for banks to partner with organizations like yours to fulfill their CRA requirements, right? And then also support righteous organizations like yours in that mission. Can you guys talk a little bit about that, man? Because I think it's very important that people really understand the bank's role in all of this,
right?
Responsibility.
I think when you start speaking of that, you're talking about lines of credit and opportunities that may not have the maturity line that a lot of businesses have. Because when you're doing something, a lot of these situations are considered, as we know, opportunity zones. So they remain to be high risk. And a lot of people that are coming into those fields are new businesses. So they don't have the track record that most businesses would have. So when you're speaking of that, a bank definitely has to be more flexible, especially when you're talking about lines of credits, loans, or different opportunities of growth. So with our CRAs primarily working with a lot of Florida funding, with our community redevelopment agencies, we have a lot of funding that comes from federal that goes down to state, and then those states take them down to counties, and then the counties take them down to cities and in particular sectors of the city. Most of them, of course, are underserved communities or blighted communities, which are normally only positioned that way because if you look traditionally in South Florida, almost every Black neighborhood is in the northwest corridor of the city. So that was strategically done for bases off of indentured service and slavery. So nothing is by accident. It was all designed that way. And in Florida, a big separator, which if you want to think of racism, the road that separates a lot of Florida is still called Dixie Highway. I mean, it's not ironic that that's the name, but I don't think people understand the psychological impact that happens with something like that. So Dixie Highway divides a lot of our communities. And then, of course, with Flagler coming from the Northeast, Flagler ran the highways as well as the train system directly to split the communities. So our railroads serve as a much different purpose when you start thinking about South Florida.
Wow. And so many parallels, man, with what we see here in Tennessee, particularly in Memphis. And this is probably, across the country, right? Where there was a very strategic, intentional, unrighteous endeavor that went to discredit and kind of, impede the routing of resources to people of color.
Racism is not by accident. It's something that's taught.
Exactly. So, facts.
And for it to be successful, it has to be strategic. A lot of people don't realize we always, on platforms like this, we talk about success and the opportunities for success, but hatred and diminishing someone has to be executed to perfection. That's where wars come from. That's where racism come from. You have to make a decision that you're going to try to belittle someone or hinder them from their best capabilities.
Yeah, without question, man. So tell us about, so with that, digital grassroots innovation and technology. We talked just briefly, man, kind of offline about the need for people of color to get involved in industries outside of, what we typically do, right? Those that are kind of low barrier to entry. that sort of thing. And it's not to say those aren't great businesses or great businesses for people to be in,
Mhm.
but we kind of, in a homogenous type way, we kind of tend to gravitate towards those businesses that have, and a lot of it's because of the things that you mentioned, the systemic racism, the intentional racism that keeps the resources down for people to get involved in higher barrier to entry type industries and businesses. So, talk about that, and talk about, the impact that technology has, and how you're essentially helping to change the mindset of people going into businesses where there normally would be apprehension, or at least that's a lot of what I see, is a lot of
Yeah.
apprehension, because they don't see a lot of people like themselves in an industry, and they don't see it with enough sex appeal because it has a high barrier to entry. It requires a lot of capital, some knowledge, things like that, experience that sometimes tends to give people more of a defeatist mindset. Man, can you speak to that a little bit, bro?
Well, actually, what you said was the last part was the part I was going to dive into more. It's not a great appeal until you've made it, right?
Yeah.
Technology and innovation is a place where you're going to constantly get beat up. You hear a lot of no's, and you can't ignore the bro culture or the elitism that comes with it, because technology
Right.
costs a lot of money, and technology is also always not based on revenue made. It's the potential. Most of your VCs are building something and you're developing something for acquisition or sale. So as we said, it's paper money. And what
Right.
we mean by paper money is you don't actually have an asset to sell, but you're bidding on the fact that someone wants to acquire that asset or to merge. And that makes it harder because it takes a lot of money up front, because it's not like you come into it and you're just making $40 million to pay for that $50 million of runway that you have or expenses. Um, and when you're in a field like that, you come into some immediate barriers and immediate hurdles, which would be like your friends and family around.
Mm.
And we have a lot of people that's where they're stuck at. I see a lot of great Black entrepreneurs and founders that won't be able to get past that friends and family round. They are stuck in a position where they cannot move forward because they can't hire a CTO, they can't hire a developer, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a good idea. So our goal is to try to give them some of those skills, whether it's marketing, pitching, or just trying to understand how to actually connect with someone to build their company. And it's a challenge. We see a lot of people where there's some truths that are there, but there's some truth that is left out, where that you constantly hear, well, Black founders are under mentored and they're not as well prepared. It's not that. They just have different standards that are expected of them. Whatever a mediocre white man can get funded for, an excelling Black woman will still be critiqued for. And that's just the way of the land. There's certain things that won't change. I've seen a lot of my I would say cohorts and people that we've worked with, especially a lot of our Black female founders, outstanding, skills, degrees, masters, PhDs. And I've seen a young white male that has dropped out of college, has an idea on paper, and he's going to secure a couple of millions of dollars before I can get this Black female founder to get $50,000. So there's just some truths that are consistently ignored. And our goal, besides teaching, is to bring uncomfortable truth and uncomfortable awareness. And we try to do that unapologetically. And I put myself out there on the front lines a lot, where I'm going to say something that I know the Black female founder that just came and complained to me, I'm going to say what she can't say, because I'm willing to take it, because I've been running a business successful for 15 years. But she's relying on somebody else's money to get to that next goal. With CRAs, and as me and you discussed, with CRAs, procurement and grants, I'm not as reliant, besides my skill set in the RFP. And I can't get as judged in the RFP as I can meeting someone at a happy hour, where the first thing they're going to see is exactly what I am right now: an Overtown t-shirt and a tilted fitted cap. I'm already going to be judged when I stepped in the room. And most people will say, well, you could change that. I don't want to change myself just to be successful. I want to be who I am to be successful.
Facts. Yep. No, I love that. And that's actually a big piece of what we try to share with business owners in terms of building their businesses, to be able to be yourself. You don't have to change who you are or try to mimic anything. Just be who you are, whatever that is.
And be great.
Yeah.
And so that's how, and I'm sure our publicists that reached out to you and they talked to you about this, that's how we got into GROWTHerapy. So generating revenue opportunities and wealth, we started seeing those struggles, and you started seeing another course of what we would call abandonment, where you had so many Black entrepreneurs that heard, oh, we're going to do this because of what happened to George Floyd. How can we help? We didn't realize it was so bad. And my response to him was, imagine how bad it is. Imagine living it, and still every day you got to wake up and perform at an optimal level with that weighing on your shoulders.
Right.
So when we started therapy, you started seeing the same thing. Oh, there's millions and billions of dollars, that have been allocated for mental wellness. We were struggling to get $250,000. People talk about problems, and I found a lot of society has figured out that it's more beneficial to speak about a problem than to actually solve a problem. So we gave them a report, and we showed the improvement. We showed the attendance. We showed what we were capable of doing just by giving 50 entrepreneurs 6 weeks of therapy for free, group sessions and one-on-one sessions. Everybody had an increase of revenue. Everybody had an increase of community engagement. Everybody had an increase of actual help. So if I've told you this is what the community needs, and you're saying you want to help the community, why aren't people cutting more checks?
Yeah, that's the same. You're having the same conversation there that I'm having in Memphis with these bankers. A lot of them that I've worked with, I've known for many years. I'm like, listen, again, where's the money, right? You know what I mean? Like I see it going everywhere else.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's going to this, it's going to that initiative, things like that. But, the banks have done extremely well, especially coming out of that last recession, where many of them are very well capitalized and have, in many cases, have excess cash on the books that they need to do something with. And
record profit organizations.
Yeah.
Record profit margins. I mean, one of my biggest struggles right now, without going too deep, is my banker of choice and who I've been with since they were Wachovia is just horrible with our community. And I'm right on the verge of just 6ing a way out. And I guess besides worrying about somebody trying to hack and find my accounts, Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is just absolutely horrible with their engagement with the Black community. And they continuously fail us. And it's just like, you got to do better.
And you would think they do better, though, brother, considering everything they've been through. You think they'd be like, you know what I mean? But that's not your experience, though, right?
I just feel when you get to a certain level of money, the arrogance doesn't make you change. You just do enough with public relations to say you've changed, but you never make any actual changes. You'll spend $300,000 on a commercial. You'll spend, $2 to $6 million on distribution of that commercial, but you won't spend more than $100,000 for an internal program to make your company better.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy that, and talking to someone like yourself, man, it's wild, because these are battles I'm fighting every day here in our community. These conversations trying to compel, people in position to come back and just, lend a helping hand, and don't just make it. One of the things I'm big about is, two things. One, reducing the barrier. I want to get your thoughts on this, brother. Reducing the barriers to capital. Like, we're a cash flow lender at River City Capital. And I'm educating people every day to not be so ultra focused just solely on personal credit. That's just one kind of criteria in which we look at deals. I want to look at business plan. I want to look at, are we putting you in a good position to be successful?
Right.
And I'm just of the belief, the second part is, I'm of the belief that if you put the resources in the hands of the entrepreneur, they're going to figure that out, right? They're going to figure things out. If you put the money in the hands and the resources, like you said, the access to, assessing mental health, right? The access to, legal resources, legal documentation, things like that, marketing, PR support, understanding the financial health of the business, how to track that, how to use, whether you're using QuickBooks or whatever tools that you're using. So my thing is if you put those resources in the hands of the entrepreneur, business owner of color, with the support, they're going to make it happen. And so oftentimes when I'm talking with companies, what they want to do, like you say, is window dress it, or they want to do what's just called technical assistance, where they just want to, put baby money into, getting somebody an hour with an attorney or something like that. It's like, man, that doesn't move the needle.
Right. I think I I wouldn't make it different, but one way I would kind of challenge it
Yeah.
would be the level of forgiveness. Black people seem to be in much more stringent situations where me and you, and of course, just so people are clear, we just met each other, but like you said, kindred spirits, we know the stories.
Right.
Me and you can definitely speak of someone else we've met of the Caucasian persuasion that has been bankrupt 3 or 4 times, but can still
Facts.
go in and get money.
Mm-hmm.
But we can also look at a African American individual that has an 800 credit score, house probably paid for, and will still struggle to get the same loan that somebody else that's already failed 3 times has
Yeah,
gotten.
that's unbelievable, man. Crazy as
And
hell.
so I find one of the bigger problems that extends to the aspect of leniency. And I don't mean allow people to continue to fail. I just mean have the same guidelines and restrictions for everybody so it's equal across the board. But as you're doing that, you have to be just as willing to be open armed to teach someone.
Yeah.
So when he gets to make a mistake 3 times or he doesn't understand somebody, and you sit there and literally walk him through the process to educate him, you have to make sure you're doing that with everybody.
Facts.
And that's where I don't feel, I feel that's where mentorship, this claim mentorship that people talk about from the banking industry. There's a difference between, I can think about Barbara Melvin, which was our first accountant, our first banker that signed us up to everything at Wachovia. I still talk to Barbara to this day. I can still ask her a banking question. I remember the way she handheld us to things that I didn't understand. I didn't know how to control 6 figures. I didn't know what an account was going to look like with that kind of money. Having $5,000 was a big deal to me when I was 20 some years old.
Facts.
But I
That's
can
true.
I can remember that conversation to walking into Wells Fargo now, depositing 6 figures and still being treated like I'm just a little dude off the street.
Yeah. I
And then
mean,
they run the credit, and it's like, "Oh, Mr. Hall, you sure you don't want to take that $50,000? No, I don't want to take nothing from you because of the way you just treated me when I walked through this door."
right.
So there's certain things that I feel when you experience them, we don't take that energy and turn it into motivation of trying to make a change. We
Mm-hmm.
normally just bottle it up and we still focus on self. I try to spend more of my time like, hey, you're not going to go through this. I'm going to tell you what to expect. And I'm going to tell you how to maneuver around it. And as much as I'm a consultant and I
Right.
should be paid for a lot of the advice I give, but sometimes you just got to give to the community just so the community does better.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. Our guest today, Michael Hall, joining us here on episode 286 of the Minding Your Business podcast. Make sure, and it's in the show notes, but make sure you go to digigrass.com, DIGIGRASS.com. Make sure you go there so you can tap in with what's going on there in the South Florida area and support Michael and his organization. When you look at what do you kind of foresee going forward? Like right now, man, we're in kind of this interesting time, right? With all the inflation stuff going on. There's a lot, it seems like another distraction comes up every day. You know what I mean? Where do you see or kind of foresee things here, kind of the rest of 2022 going into next year, man, that we should be ahead of on how we can all just do better in supporting, Black, Indigenous, people of LGBTQ. How do we support, groups that have been marginalized, disrespected,
Hmm.
put down, right? How are we supporting? How should we be as you project going forward? What are some things we should be doing?
I would say the base awareness would be digital discrimination. You
Mm,
have to be ready and prepared for the new form of discrimination, which is going to definitely be through technology.
wow.
Uh, that digital discrimination will come in forms of your lack of awareness, your lack of knowledge, and your lack of intelligence on particular topics.
Yeah.
Those topics will rely upon the platforms of Web3, blockchain, NFTs, and cryptocurrency.
Mm,
You'll find yourself in a position where if you don't have an NFT, you're not going to be allowed into certain things and get certain privileges. If you
wow.
don't understand the metaverse, there's going to be data hidden from you that you're not going to have access to. If you don't
Mm,
have blockchain or a digital wallet, you're going to have not have access to making certain investments and getting certain money. We have
right.
a society that has taken what we would remember, assuming me and you are probably around the same age, we
Yeah.
have a society that may not remember in our late teens, early 20s, the Sims world. And
Yeah.
Sims was a big video game where you built everything in this virtual reality. That is now becoming mainstream into real life. And you now don't have just fake shoes on Sim. You have Nike buying patents for designs of shoes in the metaverse.
Yeah.
So I think digital discrimination is the thing to pay attention to, and people need to take the time instead of watching, and no disrespect to my wife because she might be listening, but instead of watching Real Housewives and different shows, you're gonna
Right.
have to
Right.
spend
Right.
some time diving into TechCrunch, and you're gonna have to spend some time watching stuff that may seem to be very mundane and boring,
Mm-hmm.
but when they start selling your house titles as a security token and you don't know how that operates and you end up getting robbed and someone steals your whole security token from a digital wallet because you didn't know how to secure it,
Right.
that's where our problems are going to lie. So I believe digital discrimination is the thing we have to be aware of.
That's is very, not only is it very interesting, and I see a lot of truth with that. I actually went on myself, and I've bought land in the metaverse. I actually went and then bought my own house in the metaverse. Well, actually, the first thing I did when I first was learning and becoming educated about it, I was like, man, well, it's like, you can buy property. Let me see what my house, that I got right now.
But see, that's the first part of
You know
it.
what I mean?
See what you're talking about. So now we're having this conversation. Now I'm
Right.
glad you did exactly what you did. Me and you are sitting around talking about, let's say we own our houses now.
Right.
Part two of our conversation, me and you are talking about owning land and owning a house in the metaverse. So what people are not considering is, where does that lead? That leads
Right.
to a new age of depression, imposter syndrome, and insecurities. Now you're going to have a whole nother element of mental wellness because people are going to feel excluded all over again.
Right.
So it's a new form of segregation that we're not doing intentionally on our end. But in other societies, they're doing it intentionally because they're hoping you can't keep up.
Right.
So if you're talking about now, if I go to Overtown and Miss Susie and Donovan, they don't even have Wi-Fi and they're struggling just to get internet services, how am I even having this conversation with them?
Right.
They can't have this conversation. And now they're excluded from another opportunity, just like we were excluded in the 20s, just like we were excluded in the 60s. You're going through a whole different area of basically like a digital Jim Crow if you're not educated or if you're not privileged enough.
Boy, man, that listen, Michael Hall's our guest today, man. We just with that, we got to come back and do another episode. I'm sorry, brother. I'm gonna be reaching
That's
back out to your publicist people, because we got to come back and, man, we could do, man, it's a whole conference,
Digital
setup.
Jim Crow.
Digital
Jim Crow is definitely a situation.
I mean, that as a topic is, and the impact. I don't know anybody listening to this today can really grasp the impact of what you just said. And there's so much packed into that, and there's so many things that are going to be an impact. 'Cause I went out there, right, as someone, that's kind of we're in this space, and I was getting educated, and I went out, and like when you talked about securing your digital wallet and things like that, I was getting educated on that. And as you were saying that, it just made me think, like, when the pandemic first hit, right, and you had schools shutting down and kids had to go home, whereas kids were at the school building, and if there's 2,000 kids there, there was 2,000 kids with one standard, right? They all had access to pretty much the same resources within that school building, right? So if there's high-speed internet in the school building, everyone in the building has high-speed internet and access to it. When those 2,000 kids go home, now you've got wild discrepancies in who's got access to what. There's all these haves and have-nots, and that's what came to mind as you were saying that. I was like, man, that's what happened with kids. That's why it was such a struggle.
And that's just one area.
That's just one area.
So let's remove kids. Let's get into, if my grandmother and my mother was really into the stock market, and if they knew to take that money that was sitting in savings, that their savings was going to drop down to a 0.5% APY, if they had taken $10,000 and $20,000 and bought into, I mean, let's just be basic. If they bought Spirit, I think Spirit came up by 150% from where it was at. If we're trying to get into, me and you are having conversations about the new future. We have a
Right.
whole generation, we have a whole culture that still is just understanding retail trade of stock markets.
Yeah.
So look at that gap.
Yeah, it's a
And
huge gap.
that's where wealth is created. We weren't taught that. I graduated in 1997. So you
Okay.
just imagine with the statistics that they gave. I'm talking about graduation from high school.
Yeah.
High school gives standard thing from Southern Alabama. You got a chest full of all the supplies you're going to need for your dorm. Everybody from the family contributed to it, et cetera, et cetera. Great
Right.
thing to have: deodorant, toilet tissue, all the necessities you need. I still have that chest to this day in my room.
Yeah.
That was probably $150 worth of supplies. Imagine if my family would have gave me $100 worth of Apple stock in 1997. Just $100. I think 6 years ago, that $100 of stock was evaluated at $11.7 million.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think of what you be doing with your organization. You know what I mean? With that type of funding.
I'm calling my parents back. Oh, your house is paid for. I'm calling my little sister, my nephew, good.
Right.
But we don't do those things. So like now I have an account for my nephew. Now I'm telling my sister, hey, instead of spending $40 on some shoes he's going to grow out of, go buy him some Bitcoin. Just let it sit.
Right.
So we have a lot. But then, like I said, you go back to the same thing. You're not on the outside. Take the time to learn, but take care of your mental self. Be secure within yourself. Grow within your community. Find people you can ask questions to. But I mean, I've never said it. The right people will draw the right things out of you. But I'm telling you right now, I can't get the Jim Crow. I can't get it out my head now that I've said it.
Yeah.
I've never said it before, but that's what it feels like. It's one of those things, if you're looking for the right word to express what you're feeling, where people can understand it, that's what I've been feeling the last 6 months. And it feels like we got a couple of dudes that slid through the cracks, and now that they're in there, they're not really trying to help nobody else.
Right.
So it's the difference between James Brown and Ray Charles when they just said, you know what, we're not going to perform on these circuits no more if you can't treat our people right.
Right.
And then they get blackballed just to come back decades later that now the same song that you discriminated them for is your state song. That's what I feel like right now. So maybe one day this pain and frustration that me and you are going through will become a state song. But right now I feel like we Jim Crowed, and by teaching people, we're going to get blocked out. Yeah. They just don't want us to educate people.
No, they don't. And that's why, even when I'm doing this podcast or I'm out and about having conversations or doing things, social media doesn't always allow these things to go out, these type of conversations, because there's certain key words that obviously that trigger how they shadow ban and do that type of thing right now.
Absolutely.
But man, you blew my socks off with digital Jim Crow though, brother, man. One, we got to get that phrase coined for you. So we got to get you covered there.
I'm gonna send you a shirt. I make shirts outside in the garage. I'm gonna send you one.
Yeah, we got to get that all trademarked out and everything like that, man, for sure. But man, yeah, you just man, if I had hair, you singed it off my head, man. Man, whew. I was like, man, that's exactly. But like you say, it encompasses exactly what you said, that these things, these platforms will be used as, because you've got so many generations that are alive right now.
Yeah.
More than you had in the past. I mean, you've got everything from great generation folks to whatever they call these new folks being born here in the last few years. Right. They'll figure out a title for them. But man, that whole piece, because it's changing so fast too, man. And people are just not, they're just not keeping up with it. And I have that same fear that we're not going to get enough education out there to get our folks in and really leveraging and taking advantage of these opportunities. Yeah. And that's why I love it. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because you're in that digital technology space. And that's why I asked you the question earlier about, getting our folks into that space more and thinking that way, as opposed to only thinking of the low barrier areas that are just common, that they constantly see people in. It's like,
it's kind of like, no matter what you're doing, think of what the digital version of it would be. That's the easiest way to approach it. It doesn't matter what you're doing, how what's the digital version of it, or how would you digitize it? If someone came to you and said, here's $500,000, what are you doing now? How would you make it more digital? So we got to start thinking about that in real estate. Real estate agents got to start learning security tokens. You got to understand that now your titles and deeds might just be a token. It doesn't mean the paper will go away, But there's
Right.
certain people, they're going to want to spend more money than that just because you formatted it that way. We don't want to be left out of those conversations. I'm just
No.
tired of us having to catch up. I just want us to be in a position where we can get ahead or at least have equal playing field.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. I'm right there with you. As we kind of wrap this up, man, because again, I'm gonna be getting back with you. That whole digital Jim Crow, man, we having that conversation. And I don't care if we got to loop in some other folks with it, but we've got to get that out to the community.
I'm with you.
Definitely for sure. So with your team, how did you build your team? So because people that are listening to this, it's like, man, I'd love to be able to do what Michael's doing, or I'd love to be able to do what Ron's doing, or other people, man. How do I get involved?
Don't do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a different type of existence when you're advocating and you're audacious about how you advocate for people of color. That's not
Right.
something and for me, brother, coming in as someone that was in banking, right? So that's where I was. Right.
You know what that heat feel like. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only do I know what the heat feel like, but there are pieces of my career that I know I was blackballed or, that I had to face that caused me challenges through my career. Cause it was, it wasn't all smooth all the time when I'm advocating for people. You know what I mean? Even when I get to certain levels, like I was at a level at an institution, man, where they got rid of me for advocating for people. You know what I mean?
I feel that way with certain communities southern of me, the Miami-Dade County, and certain communities, not the whole county, because I sit on the cryptocurrency task force for Miami-Dade County.
Okay.
But if you're building something from advocating, I guess this is where I would say the personal advice comes in. Make sure you have somewhere where you're making your revenue where you don't have to kiss the ring and people can't control you. That would be number one. Number two, your circle is going to be small, but you got to build with people that's willing to lose like you and willing to fight like you. Because what you don't want to do is be out there shadow boxing and ain't nobody really telling you that the lights are on and the shadow is gone.
Right.
You just don't want to do things by yourself. But other than that, have a supportive spouse. Have somebody that you can unload those emotions onto, because if you keep them bottled up inside, they'll literally eat you from the inside out. And then find a balance in life. Mine's is old cars in the gym. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, that just sounds easy. What I'm saying is what I mean. You got to have that 4-step process. You got to have a way to unload. You got to know that you're fighting for something people don't want to see happen. And when you advocate, it doesn't matter. Like you said, it doesn't matter if you're advocating for indigenous people, if you're advocating for LGBTQ. Every advocation comes with a fight, because there's a reason why those people have been marginalized. Right. And there's a benefit to someone by continuing to marginalize them. And when you're taking a benefit away from greed, it will come with some cost. So if you're not willing to fight that struggle and go through that, I mean, think about it. I'm 42. There ain't no way you can tell me that I look older than Martin Luther King when he died, because that man was carrying the barriers of the world on his shoulders.
Facts.
And I wish I could have spoken like that when I was 32 to 36 years old, to have that amount of intelligence and that amount of wisdom. But when you're doing so much for the people, it weighs on you. But you have to find a way to offset that pain and that struggle, because it gets frustrating. And but at the same time, you still got to secure your mask first. It's one of our most popular sayings. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, because I found myself sometimes, Ron, I'm advocating things. I'm advocating for people that don't want to be advocated for.
That's the other piece now.
Yeah, that's the part a lot of people don't want to talk about. You also got to know when to just walk away, because sometimes you advocate for people, they like that simple life. They don't want to move past where they're at, and you can't push them any further. So you got to walk away and go do for you. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm kind of taking a break, but there's certain things like this. I'm now figuring out, I can go to Tennessee, I can go to Alabama, I can go to Texas, I can go to Georgia. And it's like, it's an embrace. It's a different kind of embrace, but we know how the story goes. Heroes are normally always awarded from afar, never by those they're actually protecting. So everybody that saw Batman in Gotham City, it was just Batman. But everybody outside of Gotham City was like, oh, it's Batman.
Right.
So if I got to be a Batman, that's what I got to be. But I'm going to keep doing what I feel God has sent me here to do, and using my talent. I'm outspoken. I'm very blunt, and I don't mind criticism. It's harder to hurt my feelings, but I will continue to make it a priority to protect our Black women and to protect our community.
Yeah, and there it is, man. Michael Hall's our guest today here on the Minding Your Business podcast, man. Make sure you tap into the link in the bio, digigrass.com. That's where you need to go, DIGIGRASS.com. Make sure you go that. Learn more about growth therapy, as Michael was sharing about their program for supporting cohorts of business owners with mental health and mental health support, man. I want to dig into that.
Hey, man, before I go, I hate to cut you off. I know,
brother.
I know we got an outro, but I just want to say it now. 286 congratulations for whatever you had to go through to make 286 episodes happen. I hope when you get to 300, I'm right there with you. But I just want to say, doing a podcast, having to edit, having to set up, people don't understand, having to pull yourself together to ask the right questions, to be attentive, to edit those screens, to make sure when to do a shout out. We don't always give people credit. And I'm at a point in my life, I don't need you to get these roses 2 days from now. I don't need you to get these roses in the text message. I want everybody to hear. So congratulations to you for a show and having the vision and tenacity to know that people need to hear things like this, because visionaries normally don't get credit till they're dead, or visionaries normally don't get credit till people close their eyes because you can't see what's right in front of you. So I want to say congratulations to what you're doing right now.
Yeah, hey, thank you, brother. I appreciate that, man. Blessings to you and your family. And it's very true. We have to get better about that, man. And I want to reciprocate that to you, brother, for what you do, because, I'm one of 61 right now CDFI presidents, Black CDFI presidents in the United States right now. And so there's not a lot of, opportunities to really bounce things and kind of, people really understand what you face on a day-to-day basis. I mean, even this very podcast, I talked about having been impacted. There were past banks that didn't like me doing this type of podcast, or they wanted to actually shape it and try to bend it to their will. And I was like, no, this is my podcast. This is how I do it. And I know those things contributed to some tough times that they tried to place on me at different points. And my wife, like you mentioned, is very supportive, man. I'm right along with you, man. I'm 41. I graduated in 99. Okay. And so did my wife. And so, nearly 15 years with my wife and 3 daughters, man. So we are, she's extremely supportive, and that's how we go about it.
So you got the Mamba mentality built into you, girl dad, straight out the box.
There you go, brother. That's it.
Right. Well, man, stay up. I appreciate you having me on the show, and congratulations, and anything I can do to help. But we got to find a way to collaborate and keep this going, man.
Yep, absolutely. We're going to definitely be in touch, man. I'm going to get in touch with your people. We got to do that next kind of follow up for the next episode, and then other ways that we can, bounce ideas or be, and collaborate.
I'm going to design the shirt this week. So I'm on. What's your shirt size? XL, 2X?
XL.
I got you. I'm gonna design that shirt. We're gonna get that digital Jim Crow shirt made.
Yeah, there we go, man. Yeah, definitely get that, man. Listen, whatever the cost, hit me with it.
Ain't no cost, man. I just need your address. I got you.
Oh, God, appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much, man. Michael Hall joining us today, man. Peace, brother. I'm gonna talk with you.
Yep.
All right, so man, that was really dope, man, having Michael Hall in there. Make sure, again, you tap it, the links in the show notes. Make sure y'all tap in. Y'all are in tune with organizations like this, right? It's very important that you become aware. We talked about digital Jim Crow. Listen, brother knocked my socks off with that, man. I jotted it down. I was like, man, that's what it is. Those are the conversations we need to have, but not just the conversations. We need to put into place executable strategy, right? And with measured results. And that's where we are, and that's what we're talking about these days. So listen, make sure you share this episode. Share this with other people in your circle. Share it with people not in your circle. Share it with your children, because, again, these are conversations and this is information that we need to get out there. We can learn about everything else. Some of y'all know everything Kanye West do. But then when they come out, I don't know nothing about crypto. You learn it just the same way you learned about his stuff. You didn't know where he was at till you learned it, right? So some of y'all know everything about everybody else. Let's channel our interest into things that are of a higher order. All right. Three things that unite us, no matter where you come from, no matter what side of the tracks, no matter what side of the water. Three things that can unite us all. We all want to be a little bit better for ourselves, a little bit better for our families, and a little bit better for our communities. So keep that in mind with everybody that you come across. And then collectively, as people, we'll make this place just a little bbit better. Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast.